Destiny 2 has an estimated over 43 million players, making it one of the biggest MMOs on the market. However, unfortunately online, we only hear the opinions of the 1%, the people that get the most attention. This can be both very talented content creators and other people who think they know everything about the game, and also very horrible 0.2 KDs who think they know everything about the game. However, there's still a solid 41 million people in between those groups, and we never hear from them. These are just your average players, people who just play the game to have fun. What does the voice of the average player have to say about this game? We don't get this opinion very often. We don't see it pretty much at all. And yet, this is the majority of the player base. In this series, if you're not familiar with it already, I'm going through every single level of player, from bad players, me, to middling, to high, all the way up to the very top, and maybe a content creator or two in between. Wink! In this video, I'm going to be interviewing Jellyback Joe, one of my close friends. He's a decent player who's played this game since pretty much week 1 of Destiny 2. He's a composer, a content creator, and has worked on things like the AAA ARG, if you're familiar with that. He's an all-around great guy, and an average player, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So what does the average Joe have to say about this game? This video is going to be more podcast style, so if you're used to my more traditional style of videos, there will be some of that towards the end of this video where I have some analysis. However, most of this is just going to be me interviewing Joe. So if you just want to look for my thoughts and opinions, go to this timestamp. But if not, please listen carefully, as I think he has some very important things to say, and he's just all-around awesome guy. If you want to go follow him, here are his socials. Double Y, and let's get right into it. Alright, so Joseph, if you would introduce thyself and what you do and other things about you, miscellaneous, whatever, just
what I do? Oh no.
No,
that's my least favorite question.
You don't have to say, just who are
who am I? Great question. I don't know. I'd love to figure it out. Let me know if you do.
Philosophical in the first 5 seconds. This is going.
Yeah, no. Wouldn't have it any other way. So I have been playing Destiny since Vanilla D1. Not day 1, but I think either week 1 or week 2. I know it was month 1 in some capacity. Outside of Destiny, I am an aspiring media composer, so someday I'd actually like to write music for Bungie and for Destiny. That's like a long-term career goal, but I just want to, write music for games in general. But yeah, I have been, for most of my Destiny career, a PvP main until I'd say about the past year, where I'm now kind of, split evenly. And yeah, you told me about this kind of idea, or we might have actually been in the call at the time that you had the idea, and I just thought
you were the catalyst for it.
I wasn't the catalyst.
Hax gave me the idea.
It was Hax's idea, and I chimed in with something maybe slightly useful. I'm very interested to see how this series turns out, and I think that hearing from a variety of skill levels will be very nice in one standardized place, as opposed to the something show that is Twitter, because that is a lot of that's some heated opinions over there. Yeah. So
9 circles of hell over there. But anyways, so you kind of already answered the first question, how long have you played Destiny? So I can just go straight into the second one, which is amazing. How would you describe your skill levels? So like, you obviously don't have to say like, you don't have to play yourself up or play yourself down, but how would you say?
Oh no, bro! I got Trials Report open right now. I got Trials Report, so I can be thorough.
We're gonna spam.
I would describe myself as average or slightly above average at best. There are, and I say that with a little bit of not sarcasm, but just a little waver in my voice, purely because I've had people tell me that I go in both directions of that. I have had people told me that I'm a very good Crucible player, and I've had people tell me that I am an absolute dog pee-pee Crucible player. My skill kind of fluctuates. To tell you just statistically what we're working with here, Trials KD, I'm about a 1.34. For lifetime. I've got 80 flawlesses. More recently, in the past couple seasons, let's see, I've been more in the 1.4 direction, I would say. Gilded Unbroken 6 times, Gilded Flawless 3 times. I have tried to guild flawless more than that. There were a couple seasons that were just rough, or I didn't know anybody that needed to carry. So I would say, I've had my fair share of like, I've beaten top 500 players, but I've also gotten steamrolled by 0.5s in, a couple unlucky scenarios.
Hmm.
So I would say, as far as skill level, it's kind of that the inconsistencies balance out to put me in kind of an average spot. Although I would say I'm more of like
Slightly
a
above.
polarized.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like it's
Hmm.
hard to tell sometimes, to be
Yeah.
perfectly
It's
honest.
hard to
So
tell
I'm just
yourself.
yeah, with just based on the community kind of what they accept as skill ranges, I would say that I am average, but with a little asterisk that leads to inconsistencies have created this result.
Okay, that makes
There's a lot of
sense.
yeah. There's a lot of players that play great all the time. There's a lot of players that play bad all the time. I am not either of those.
Okay, so you've obviously been playing for a while now, and you're somewhere in the middle there. So, as kind of just the average Joe, spoilers, that's going to be the part of the pun in the title.
Oh my god.
Yeah, sorry. But your name's too punnable. So what would you say has been your favorite loadout or weapon to use? And kind of as a tangent to that, what was your favorite meta to play in?
Ooh, okay, let's see. So my most used weapon for sure is the Chaperone. I have been using the Chaperone since D1, since before it was cool. Back in the days where aggressive shotguns could completely map you, and Chaperone actually took skill. I was a Chaperone main, and I know there will be people in the comments, Chaperone never took skill. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe it didn't, but people thought it did at the time, and I remember
Look,
that vividly. So
fun fact, YouTube comments just their opinions don't count. No offense down there,
I
but
have been a YouTube comment, and I
no
can confirm
offense.
that. My opinion did not count, not once.
They don't count. Look, love you
Yeah.
guys to death. They don't count, bro. They don't count.
Um,
There's some
so
things down there. If you guys go looking, you'll understand what I mean.
so I'd say, and I have started to use Chaperone again more recently after switching off it for a bit. Chaperone Igneous Hammer is probably one
Mm,
of my most beloved loadouts. I mean, right now I'm using the Immortal because everybody kind of has to
it's the
use the
immortal.
Immortal. I like to win, sue me. So, specifically in trials,
Hmm.
most of the time I'll whip that out or in competitive. But I am very much a fan of the shotgun hand cannon playstyle. I think that's kind of a little bit it's IP defining, I believe. I know not everybody like shares that opinion, but really if you look at like what Bungie wanted it to feel like when you are a guardian and you are this lone superpowered space hero. I really think that kind of combination of like sci-fi with that fantasy and a little bit of that western, the hand cannon is really like the destiny gun. If you
Hmm.
look at all the most iconic exotic weapons, a lot of them are hand cannons. And then a shotgun is just such a fun, up close and personal, like movement based thing. Like you can hit a lot of sick clips with a sniper if you're good at it. But nothing, I think, from a like definitive skill standpoint really compares to somebody, actively sliding from cover to cover and getting some aerial movement and just bamboozling the crap out of somebody.
Shotgun hand cannon is that's popular. And then kind of again tangent. What do you think is like your favorite either year or season for Destiny 2 PvP? What would you say was the golden age? Or you can obviously say I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure what my favorite meta would be. I can tell you some things in the general vicinity of that. So, Season of Dawn is when I actually kind of like quote unquote got good or got better. For most of Destiny 1, I was in like the zero point 0.9 range. Season of Dawn, I started, really kind of focusing and playing competitive and just attempting to improve in general. So that's kind of, and I remember there was a heavy hand cannon use in that meta, but I also really would not consider that version of me equatable to like my current kind of just style as a Crucible player. So I'm not sure I can really say that was my favorite meta to be honest, because I don't remember that much of it. I certainly do not like what it is now because I feel like some of the things that are my favorite to use are quite easily punished. And, yeah, I get good, whatever. It's annoying, but I'd say I really, because hand cannons have been good most of the time, as they should be. Like, there were a couple metas in there where they didn't really stand up to something particularly oppressive that everybody was using. And now is kind of like that, but you really can kind of use that loadout at most points in Destiny history. I'd say I was a fan of any time where basically with the exception of like that weird little period where you couldn't jump with shotguns, you couldn't slide with shotguns, you know. It's more, I know I'm kind of going all over the place right now, but it's
That's the
like
point of this.
I don't have a favorite meta. I have a couple least favorite metas.
We'll get to
You
that,
know?
trust me. All right, actually, very next question. What is your least favorite loadout or weapon to play against or use?
Okay. So all time, my least favorite loadout to play against. When Trials launched and it was that Antaeus Ward's Bastion meta, that sucked so much. That was extremely annoying. I could not stand that meta. And like auto rifles too. I don't like auto rifle metas. I can't exactly pinpoint why. No, I can. It just, I don't want to use an auto rifle. And if you're
Yeah.
playing against an auto rifle with, a more precision weapon, then it is very tough because you're just getting flinched to what. Yeah, and then I would say recently or currently a very good Peacekeeper's Titan with an SMG is
Titans.
quite hard to play against. There's something like a lot of the playstyles I like involve a bit of distance bamboozling, you know. Like a lot of times, I'm not necessarily the best shot, so I play on controller. That does a lot of the aim for me, which also means that there's a bit of autopilot in my brain, right? So I'm not the most like thoughtful placer of hand cannon shots in the world. So I have to rely a lot on positioning and other things to win my duels. It's not always I just show up in the lane and hit 3 headshots and win the duel. So anything that is like if a Peacekeeper Titan falls out of the sky and he's got Immortal and it's got, twice the range of whatever the hell I'm using, that's frustrating for me to play against because that is very range oppressive. It's very much, you can't really get closer and you can't really get farther away. Like it kind of locks you in to dueling in that range. Because you can't push a well-positioned SMG Titan, and then they also have the capacity to be extremely aggressive, especially with shoulder charge. And that's not to say I do not, disclaimer, I do not condone the shoulder charge changes that are coming. I do not like that. I think they should maybe even
one of many
buff. This might be an extremely hot take, and I'm sure it would be I'm sure people would abuse it, but maybe buff Icarus dash and buff dodge distance on hunters so that everybody has a crazy mobility thing, and then we can all fly around and it can be fun movement time. I don't.
We can all be friends together up in the sky.
Yeah.
With nerfed airborne effectiveness. Oh, that'd be great.
In addition to just the kind of oppressive control of an SMG Titan, anything, Monarch, or just like 3 people in the back of the map team shotting with a pulse rifle, things like that. Anything that is that just says, no, you can't do this, right? Because the thing about Destiny is it's kind of this big card game of whose BS can trump the other person's BS. And if there is something that just absolute says, no, you can't do this regardless of your skill with this particular weapon or playstyle, that's frustrating. There are many, many ways to outplay things with other things. And so anything that just doesn't give you room to outplay, that's, I'd say, the worst thing to play against.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be at the time.
Next question. This is kind of going to be more of the end of the negative questions. But
Sweet.
What frustrates you most about PvP in general? Not necessarily, Angie weapons, whatever, freaking Peacekeeper Titans running around. But what frustrates you most about PvP, the game mode itself?
So I've got 2 things. One of which is on Bungie's side, one of which is on the community's side. On Bungie's side, I'd say right now, something that, people aren't unaware of it. Like, there's discussion over it, but I don't think that it's necessarily as prominent in people's criticisms of PvP as it should be. There is just not enough loot. There's not enough loot there. And what I don't think is realized, or you know what, I shouldn't say that because I'm not a game dev. I'm sure there are plenty of technical legitimate reasons, logistical reasons. The reality is that a lot of the game's sustained player base is built around Crucible. And, you know, like my dad plays this game. He's like he's in his early 50s. He's exclusively a Crucible player. He has been grinding his butt off, playing comp, trying to get the glorious title. And he's close, right? He's like right up there in the end of gold, about to hit plat. But it's very difficult for him, and it seems like things are, you know, out of his control. Yes, the title is neat. Yes, the emblem is neat. But if you want to sustain a player base with a variety of skill levels, you need to reward a variety of skill levels. And it feels like it's just kind of too little too late at this point. And I think Pax will probably talk about this when you talk to him, because he had a great idea for kind of the restructuring of Crucible. But, you know, kind of a plan that I had kind of off of his idea was you have your kind of three main playlists, right? Control or a social playlist. And the social playlist has to be connection based. I know there are a lot of people out there on both sides of that argument. The way I see it, as somebody who has kind of equal 50-50 gotten destroyed and destroyed, right? As a medium player, as an average player, there has to be a social element for the game. And there also has to be rewards for actual skill and actual improvement. Right now, it feels like there's neither. They're trying to cater to everybody, but not really catering to anybody in the process. Mm-hmm. So let's give the modes identity by kind of injecting loot into them. Yeah. Let's say we add cosmetics to competitive at different ranks. Let's say we have an armor set per season, one armor set. And let's say, you know, Ascendant, you get the helmet. Adept, you get the class item. Platinum, you get the chest piece or whatever, and you're building up, and it's at different tiers, kind of like the season passes, you know, throw a sparrow in there, throw a ghost in there, just things that you can work towards on a per season basis. Now, if we do that, we put that into competitive and make competitive genuinely rank based, right? Not skill based, not any of this other crap. Make it actually like you match with people in your rank and then get a defined amount, a reasonable, explained amount of points gained or lost based on the outcome of the match. That creates two things. That creates a place for good players to earn things that really show off their skills. And it also provides a place for worse players to, you know, have a more relaxing time. Let's say you're new to the game, you get put in, you're going to continue to match with those people until you get better. So that kind of provides its own little like half skill-based matchmaking there, right? Mm. And of course you'd have people that abuse that, but you know, that is the way with any system.
Anyway. Yeah. It's going to happen regardless.
So you have an opportunity for bad players not just to play people of their same skill, but to be encouraged to improve. There's no encouragement of actual growth as a player right now, right? You're either great and you get the thing, or you're slightly less than great or worse and you don't. If we kind of tier the rewards like that and then, you know, make competitive into something that really actually divides people based on skill, but, you know, this proven number of this is the rank I'm at, rather than an invisible number that we can't see that's based on a billion statistics, who knows. I think that can solve a lot of problems in one playlist, but they can't do that right now. There's not really an opportunity where they can realistically do that and not have severe side effects because the loot isn't there. But let's say we do that. Let's say that they add the loot. That opens up control to be connection-based matchmaking, because now there is a place for the worst players to grow and not completely be oppressed. That opens up control to be that social playlist. And then trials can just be the loot shower that it wants to be, right? Because, you know, there's a lot of discussions of how free should adept weapons be to get. Mercy guard shouldn't exist is one of the hotter takes I've ever heard. That was like one person. That's not an opinion. That one's spicy. That one's real spicy.
That one's fresh off the oven. Wow. Yeah, I feel like some of the worst hot takes either come from like Twitter.com or the Bungie.net boards, and you're just like...
I stopped looking at Bungie.net years ago. I could not take that. But yeah, point being, like, there's a lot of takes about what this system should be, what that system should be. But if you add loot into the environment in a more tiered level, right? So let's say my 51-year-old dad, does sit down and gets better And like I go and give him advice of like, oh, you know, you got to strafe a little bit left and then a lot right and then a little bit left again and then more right, you know, do the fake instead of just back and forth, back and forth. And he takes and he practices that and he gets from gold to platinum, you know? Like what else can he get besides a little title? You give him an ornament, give him something that looks cool. Just more loot will open up opportunities for Bungie because right now they are relying entirely on the experience. And the gunplay is great, but it's not that great. It's not so great that it makes these inherent problems of why the hell am I playing this? It doesn't solve that. So inject loot in a major capacity into the competitive playlist and the Crucible in general, and I think that will allow Bungie to make changes that right now they can't.
And I think you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but you said there was like another community aspect as well. It's like a little simpler.
The reality is that this game being peer-to-peer and as wild and crazy with as many one-shot abilities as it does, this game is so inconsistent. And when you're giving feedback, when you're analyzing your own experience, when you're, you know, talking about somebody else's experience, there is not really any reason that certain details should be treated as absolute. You know, I mean, obviously there's things like, you know, weapon time to kill. There's things like, oh, like you died because this person shot you from the side, you were out in the open. But as far as like the nuances, right, and the experience from one person to another, people are so quick to assume just why something happened and how something happened and that it happens that way for other people. When in reality, between, you know, connection issues and servers and things like that, you know, ghost bullets, whatever. And that's not to say like I'm not, the point of this is not, Bungie, fix your game, although obviously that would be nice.
If only it were that simple.
Basically, just I think people need to make a couple less assumptions as they give criticism of the game, purely in the micro, moment-to-moment experience aspect of things. It feels like this game really, because of the way it was designed, because it was based, you know, I think they had some psychology official come in the making of D1, if I remember correctly. I read something about like the button mappings and certain things about just how the game played is designed to create a response in your head, right? To be like very instantly pleasing. And there's a lot of other research about like first person shooters and why that works, but especially with Destiny, because I think people agree it's one of the best feeling shooters from a control standpoint. It really, like, when you boot up Destiny for the first time, there is a certain power with it. And you get used to this feeling like an extension of you. And I think what that creates is a player base that's very prone to autopilot. I think that as much as it comes through in people's gameplay sometimes, also comes through in their criticism of the game. Like everything is rooted in what players feel, which is not like invalid or anything. Obviously, you know, it's about the experience that I've heard a lot of game devs talk about, like what is the experience of this game? What do we want it to be? You know, as something that's very important. And if the experience is you feel bad, it's worth it to investigate why. People are so tied up in that particular reaction and just in how the game initially on a surface level is making them feel. But people just kind of need to understand that there are way more variables going on at this game at any point than what we're used to talking about. I think that if people understand that, not only will they be a little more patient and forgiving of Bungie and of the game itself, but there will be a little bit of pressure that they're putting on themselves that's taken away, you know, because it's very much like the things that happen to you are like tied to your identity as a player, right? If I die here, it's because I lost that duel. Yeah. And that's kind of what the culture is. Not that it shouldn't be, but there are other factors at play. And I think that there's a whole lot of just people going on autopilot and wanting that autopilot to be the best possible version.
I mean, you know, emotions are valid. You feel emotions for a reason, but you have to check your emotions with reality and how other people feel. Because if you just let, oh, I felt this way, run wild, well, we have people, you know, just constantly complaining, or people being on the other side toxically positive, of just saying everything that I think is right. And while, yes, your emotions can be valid, like you feel frustrated at this game for a reason, there's something going on there, it doesn't mean that your your opinion is the end all be all of all things. And I do think that's an important realization. That's kind of the point of this whole series, is because I was like, gosh, I hate this, but why do I hate this? Even though some people say they love it and that's all they do all day, and some people are in my camp where they're just like, what do I even do here? Again, I've talked to you before. You are more on the positive side of PvP. You've been a PvP main, words, for quite a while now. So what do you like most about Destiny 2's PvP?
So I think the thing that I like most about Destiny PvP, there's a couple things. I'm a big fan of, how you're kind of the same character throughout the game. You can bring the things that you find in PvE to PvP, and there's really this sense of like, there's a lot of different play styles you can take. The difference between playing like a Strand Hunter and a Void Titan and a Stasis Warlock, and how different those feel, but how, they each have these checks and balances, and you can play to those, you can play smartly, and there's a lot of opportunities for just really creative things to happen in PvP. It's not all positioning, it's not all strategy and gun skill. There's such like a wide variety of things that could happen to you. There's just with that comes these absolutely crazy moment to moment things that can happen. These insane comebacks that the Thunder Crash is coming in to seal the deal at the end of a Osiris match, and Stasis Warlock throws his melee, freezes him out of midair. Like things like that just don't happen as much in other games where there's not as much variety. Destiny PvP, as broken as it can be at times and as ridiculous as it can be at sometimes, it has such character. There are things that really don't, or I'd say they have a super high skill ceiling. Things like, I'm not a good Heat Rises player, but oh man, there are so many this past weekend on Rusted Lands, and that is a whole skill within itself. That's a whole play style. But if I was hitting my snipes that match, then it's like boom, counter. There's just so many different ways you can approach everything, and I really enjoy that just kind of customizable experience and getting to play the way that you would like to.
I'm getting a feeling the more information I glean from talking to people in PvP is that when the game is healthier, those aspects shine of like unique abilities, just doing different things, counterplaying, using things that you love. And like you said, the worst metas are the ones that force you into a box to play how you don't want to play. And yeah, this game really is special. So it's kind of interesting to dive to the belly of the beast in a way. So we've kind of tangled around this, but what state would you describe PvP as being in right now? You can say good, bad, however you want to describe it, or even if you don't feel qualified to say.
I think that there's a couple different like mini sub-disciplines within PvP that I think deserve different descriptors. The gunplay, as always, like feels good. There are weapons that feel good. I think the removal of like airborne effectiveness and all that was a really good change to introduce that kind of whole other dimension. So like the movement and the gunplay feels nice. I think the meta needs some adjustments for sure. I'm curious. I think it would be relatively balanced right now if maybe a couple things were toned down, mainly like Immortal and Monarch.
Yeah, mainly the Immortal. Mainly that one.
I think like a couple... The meta is a couple changes away from being very good, TBH. Because I've seen people use auto rifles, I've seen people use pulse rifles, scout rifles. Like every primary weapon is getting use. Especially like Rusted Lands this past weekend, I saw so much diversity. That might not be everybody's experience, but I played a decent amount. I played how many games on Rusted Lands? I played like 60 games of Trials this weekend and saw a decent amount of at least primary weapon diversity. Not as many shotguns, it's more fusion sniper heavy, but still that'll happen on a long map. So the meta itself and like the gameplay is just a couple things away from being good, which I don't think people realize because those couple of outliers are pretty impressive. But it's not that far off, you know. It's just one or two things that seem world ending. As far as the overall experience, I think connection issues really need to be addressed, and I know it's not that simple. I'm sure there's a million technical reasons, and they're trying, because if why wouldn't they be trying? That is a major issue that has been in conversation forever, right? There's no reason for Bungie not to be trying. They're definitely working on it. It's just like, you know, they can't give updates because, you know, if they say, oh, this is how our servers work, then everybody yells louder. But honestly, like, the best thing they can do right now, besides bring in a couple, you know, meta outliers, is just do that kind of loot injection that I think a lot of us are hoping for. It's really, it's closer than people realize, but there's that major thing that keeps it from being really solid and sustainable. So I would say that it is kind of, it's like in a limbo right now. It's almost there, but it doesn't feel like it's almost there at all.
Yeah,
Right?
and I like you said, we don't quite know what Bungie's doing at all times. So of course, they've been working on, what, 5 games in the past? The Destiny Mobile, whatever that is, Destiny 2 itself. They're working on that extraction shooter Marathon. They've been working on their new franchise, whatever that is. They're still doing things that we don't quite know. It's you know, it's a strange state. I'll agree with you there. So this is the last question, but this is more of a fun one. So if you could just change or add one thing to the PvP game, what would it be? It can be another, like a map on a planet, or if you just would want to delete a subclass, like, I don't care, but what would you do? If you just got the reins to Bungie HQ, or like, all right, I get to add one thing to PvP, what do you do?
I mean, the sensible thing to say is loot and maps,
Well,
because that's what it needs.
but like specifically, what
But
would
let's
you
see.
add? Like,
Let me
where
get,
would...
so putting myself in a imaginary scenario where the meta's good and there's loot in the game and there's more of Destiny, right? Like, what would I change fundamentally? I would like to see a bit more variety of, like, the terrain in Crucible maps. Something that I really liked from Destiny 1 on the map Memento is that there is, like, a very unique verticality to it, right? I think, you know, in a map like Midtown that takes place in the last city, you know, there's all these tall buildings, and it feels like, you know, we're there's something about Midtown that doesn't feel great, just from an aesthetic standpoint and from a lore standpoint, of like, I'm like down here in the alleyways, but it doesn't there's not like that much character to it necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be in a city, take advantage of that environment. I think it would be interesting in moderation to add in some verticality to things. Just more spatial changes and opportunities for movement and positioning, rather than just kind of this one floor with cover. I'm curious how that would play out. Probably badly, but I'd like to try it.
And then the second secret question that's more like this: you get to just decide whatever a season is about. The next season, just pretend it's like season 22, the one that hasn't been announced yet. But if you just get to decide what a season's about, or like what you just want to be in a season. So this is not necessarily what would you add to PvP, but what would you just do for an entire season? What would you want it to be about? Like, either planet, topic, whatever you want.
I love this question because I already have an answer to this. I would like to see the so-called Season of Enlightenment, where the Guardian goes against Vanguard orders to uncover information about their past before they were resurrected as a Guardian.
Oh, interesting. That'd be it'd probably give Bife a panic attack, but it would be cool.
Thank you for having me and listening to my nonsensical rants about something that I don't fully understand.
Hooray! None of us fully understand it, let's be honest here. That's the point. Yay! It's the point. Is maybe we
some
can...
people.
Yeah, some people do.
Like, Frostbolt understands it.
Probably.
He gets it.
He gets it. He knows. Well, anyways, thank you, Joe, for spending this, whatever it was, 30 minutes on a call. All right, see you, man.
That's it.
Oh, I kind of forgot you were here. And that's the interview with Joe. I sincerely hope you enjoyed. And once again, if you haven't already, here's his socials to go follow. You should go do that. go do that. If you like this interview, be sure to like and subscribe, as more episodes will be coming down the line. Next episode, I'll be interviewing a high tier player in Hacks, one of the mods for the Destiny the game. He's a moderator for some Destiny subreddit, okay? Anyways, I've been friends with Joe's for forever, and I never cared to ask him what his opinions were on this game, even though the average player base is arguably the most important in this game. He struggles with many of the same things that content creators and high-tier players and low-tier players do. However, they get heckled if they call it out because they're in that specific group. However, these issues do affect people in the middle. I think the most important takeaway, though, is that he said that Bungie needed to inject loot into the game. And I mentioned this a little earlier, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It's the fact that this game isn't very rewarding to play, at least in the state it's currently in. And I think he's definitely right that there certainly needs to be some sort of loot injection. I mentioned it again in my last video, there's only pretty much an emblem for all of your troubles, and there should be something else, and Joe said that there should be things like ornaments and whatever if you were paying attention, and I very much agree with that. Again, we don't know what Bungie's working on. They could already be working on a fix for this, and we just don't know about it. Heck, since the time that I recorded my last video, they already came out with like a bunch of Trials of Osiris loot that's going to be coming out that's like, you know, ornaments and shaders and whatever else. So again, who knows what they're working on at the current time. We don't know everything Bungie's thinking, but seeing the average player say that we're just so close yet so far away is honestly in a way encouraging, because a lot of this game sometimes can be doom and gloom and oh, we're all gonna fall apart because oh my gosh, the game is falling apart at the seams. But I do think he's right. We're just a couple of steps away from this game being really, really freaking good. Again, just tone down the things that are really oppressive, like the Immortal and the Monarch, and PvP's in a pretty good state. Again, I very much hope that y'all like talking to Joe as much as I did. He's working on some very cool stuff right now, and I'm sure he can't wait for you guys to see it. So once again, go follow him to track with that, and subscribe to me if you want to hear more coming down the line. Again, next episode will be with Hacks, and then with a god tier player, who I'll have to line that up somehow, and then maybe a content creator too, who knows. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya!
Your time is up.